welcome to Addicted to Murder. This is Courtney, licensed professional counselor with over a decade of experience.
And this is Trisha. And Tanya Reid definitely told some rampelters.
I assume that's like big old fat lies.
Yes, an elaborate lie, a tall tale. Rampelter.
Tanya Reid definitely did.
Yes, as we will find out soon.
Right, when we get into part 2. But first, I think...
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
I don't usually do the would you rathers, but I got one today. Hold on, there's a whole list of them, which is the one I picked. Give me a second, because I've already forgot what it was. Oh, here we go. Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or be able to talk to plants?
Breathe underwater.
Because
then I could go swim around in the ocean with all the cool stuff.
yeah. In a perfect world where I had normal eardrums, I would be right there with you. But like if I put my head underwater, my ears just, they hurt so bad. So I'm going to go with talk to plants and be, I like the water, but I can't dive. Do you ever see, like I've seen Instagram videos of like these little, it's like a electronic box with these little electrodes on it that you can put on plants or whatever, and the energy that it gives off supposedly makes like a noise.
Yes, I
and
have
it's
seen
like
those.
Pretty sounding, and you can put them on mushrooms or whatever. I always thought those were so cool. And I have no idea what's happening there electrically. I mean, everything alive gives off some sort of energy, so I'm assuming that's what it is. But I don't know. I feel like that's sort of them talking to us.
That's fair.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of neat to get one of those just to play with. I'm sure that it has a name, but I don't know what that gadget's name is.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
I think I just always feel bad because I'm not good at keeping plants alive. So I'd be like, I'm sorry.
Well, you know that the provider in our office talks to the plants.
I do
A lot.
know that. And that people do that. And
Yeah. And he's actually got like a lot, all of his plants at home and our plants in the office are like thriving.
Got it.
And they were not thriving before he got there.
All right. Well,
So,
I guess maybe that works.
yeah. I've heard him talk to the plants. He talks to them in a baby voice. So, I mean, I don't know. But, well, we're back with Courtney's case, and we're doing part 2 of it. And I am going to attempt to give a recap, which I don't normally do, and I didn't write it down. But here we go. So, we're covering Tanya Reid, who was Tanya Thaxton, who was born in the late 50s. She was the youngest of 4 girls.
Yep.
And she was, she was not, I want to say the black sheep, but she was kind of like the one that didn't look like the rest of them. She was clumsy. Apparently she had a storm cloud following her all over the place. She ended up getting married to, what's his name, Jim?
Yep.
And they had a baby who, unfortunately, after some, hold on a second. Wait, let me just get down to it because I don't remember the name. Morgan. No.
They had baby Carolyn first.
Baby Carolyn was first. Baby Morgan was second. And baby Morgan constantly had to be resuscitated by her mom, was brought to the hospital multiple times. Like we're talking like 10 to 20 times in the hospital. She had some of these episodes in the hospital, but never when there were any like nurses around or anything, only when mom was around. And then eventually she unfortunately passed away. And it was basically attributed to kind of like a SIDS-like death at 9 months. So after that, she has another baby. And that's kind of where we're at now.
Right.
Correct? I probably left out some stuff that we might need to know, but we'll circle back to it once we get going.
Yes. Thanks, Trisha.
Okay.
So on May 2nd, 1985, Tanya gave birth to her 3rd child, Brandon Michael, who would be mostly known as Michael. And they were up in the Chicago area at this time. Yeah. All of the post-birth tests were normal, and Michael was declared healthy. Tanya and Jim had been worried that maybe a genetic problem could have caused Morgan's death that could impact baby Michael, but nothing was found. Still, Less than a month later, on May 28th, Tanya once again calls the paramedics to her home, stating that her son had stopped breathing while she was changing him and she had resuscitated him. 5 days of testing once again led to no diagnosis, but Michael was put on medication and an apnea monitor. When Tanya recalled what happened to pretty much anyone who would listen, the story continued to change. Over the next few months, Michael was rushed to the hospital 6 more times, spending a total of 20 days there. Tanya noted that she liked Edward Hospital the best, as she knew the nurses from her time working there, and they would come to visit her and talk to her. So Michael had a total of 11 episodes of stopping breathing before his first birthday.
It's still just tripping me out that like it took so long for someone to notice.
Right.
I mean, people don't just stop breathing like this all the time unless there's something that they can find wrong with them. I mean, I don't know. It's just not how it typically works, but
yeah. So in May of 1986, the Reids moved back to Dumas, Texas. Jim was a manager at the Hereford plant there, and Tanya was able to go back to her nursing career. She was close to her family once again, and she was happy. Carolyn was in school now, and Michael was enrolled in some special services to help with his motor and speech skills. And for the next 18 months, Michael had no breathing episodes.
So I'm taking from that paragraph that he was delayed.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He had some speech delays mostly.
Okay. And, it's kind of interesting that when Tanya is happy, Michael seems to be medically stable.
Right. And when she's upset and lonely, his illness seems to flare up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something interesting. But then, in May of 1987, Jim was transferred again, this time to Des Moines, Iowa. Tanya was not happy, but she, 6-year-old Carolyn, and 2.5-year-old Michael followed him there, and they moved into a cute little co-op with other families where the husbands all worked for the same company as Jim. On May 28, 1987, parents took Michael to a new neurologist just to get him established. Tanya shared a lot about the history with baby Morgan, including claiming that she had Fragile X syndrome, and, that shared about kind of what had happened with Michael in his first year of life with all of his episodes.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, Michael had been episode-free for 18 months and was off of all of his medication and apnea monitor. In early July, Michael was admitted to the hospital with an infected toenail, fever, and vomiting. But the toenail was removed, and he was treated with fluids and antibiotics and released the next day.
So when I read this, I looked up what Fragile X syndrome was. And so this is per the Cleveland Clinic. Fragile X syndrome is the most common form of inherited intellectual and developmental disability, or IDD. It gets its name because when you look at the X chromosome through a microscope, part of it looks, quote, broken or fragile. Another name for the condition is Martin-Bell syndrome. Fragile X syndrome affects your child's intelligence, mental health, physical features, and behavior. They have learning disabilities. They typically have a low intelligence quotient, or IQ. Those IQ scores decrease with age, which seems kind of...
It's degenerative.
Yeah, it's that's interesting. Delayed early developmental milestones, which we've seen with Michael and Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Delayed development of nonverbal communication, like using gestures, body language, and facial expressions. And there's language processing issues. So you might notice that a child struggles with speech and language, and that would be about age 2, and they'll go on to have like problems with math, which a lot of us do. So,
right. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. Right, so it does, in a way, explain potentially some of what they saw with Morgan. But it's notable that there was no mention of Fragile X anywhere in Morgan's medical record. So that was never a diagnosis given or even considered by her doctors.
I'm just wondering now, okay, this is the time of like Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Like,
right.
I wonder if Tanya went to the library and like looked up something.
Maybe. And we could
Or
also remember Tanya was a nurse. She had medical training herself.
it's true, like, but she would have had to still have been like exposed to what Fragile X was.
Right.
I mean, I'm no nurse, but I've been in the medical field a long time. I never heard of this. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious how.
Right.
Yeah, it does fit. It fits like these kids' problems. Besides the stopping the breathing part.
Right. That's not part of it.
Yeah, the developmental delays and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, so Tanya was eager to make friends and build community in her new city of Des Moines. Friends from her co-op described her as very talkative and outgoing, but she had a tendency to overshare and, quote, force a kind of familiarity that can only develop over months or years, end quote. She volunteered to be the troop leader for Carolyn's Brownie troop, wanting to impress the other mothers, but she came off as overeager and pushy, and as a result, Tanya was often left out or excluded by the other moms. Tanya tried to enroll Michael in an in-home service program, but he was found to be functioning pretty close to expected for his age, and was denied. Another chance at a connection for Tanya was lost.
Have you seen Orange is the New Black?
Yes.
I don't know if you'll remember this, but when I was reading this that you wrote, Red, when she was on the outside before she got in trouble, wanted so bad to be with the ladies' walking group. Mm-hmm. And she kind of forced herself in there and tried, and they just didn't like her. And they ended up like walking without her. Mm-hmm. I get like this feeling with what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So I feel bad for her because she like obviously doesn't have the greatest social skills. And, you know, it sounded like her acquaintances like wanted to like her, but she was just kind of annoying and made them feel uncomfortable. Do you have any thoughts on why she was so socially awkward?
You know, I think that Tanya wanted to come across as confident and kind of having the perfect marriage and family. That was something that kind of was really important to her mother as well. So when she was a child, they always had to, you know, present as the perfect family. Mm-hmm. But, you know, really deep down, Tanya was very insecure and lacked self-esteem. You know, she was always compared to her beautiful older sisters who, you know, were so successful and, you know, she didn't look like them. She didn't have the same social skills as them, that kind of stuff. You know, she was unhappy in her marriage. She was feeling neglected by Jim due to how much he was working. And so she, I think, tried just too hard to present the person that she thought that others wanted, but it ended up coming across as like artificial and off-putting and insincere.
Agreed.
So on October 9th, 1987, Michael had another one of his episodes. This was the first of many times the paramedics would be called to the Reid home for reports of Michael not breathing and Tanya having to resuscitate him. Tanya called them seizures, but they weren't. He was never diagnosed with seizures. The doctor suggested that Michael was intentionally holding his breath when he was angry about not getting his way, which, again, also, kids don't hold their breath till they stop breathing.
Yeah, I think it's like your sympathetic nervous system might kick in.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But either way, Michael had 4 more episodes, about 1 per month, all ending the same way, with doctors finding no medical reason for his apnea or lack of breathing. And Tanya was adamant that there was something gravely wrong with her child.
Yeah, her.
On February 7th, 1988, coincidentally, 1 day before I was born, Michael had another episode. But this time was different. Jim was home, and when Tanya cried out about Michael not breathing, Jim was the one who rushed them to the hospital. Michael was observed in the ER as being agitated and sweaty, and he had small scratches on his face. The doctors at Blank Children's Hospital were starting to suspect that something wasn't right about this little boy's illness or his family. They contacted Family Services and shared concerns that this child may be the victim of child abuse, specifically Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
So this is a different hospital than she prefers. Or wait, is this a different city?
Because they're in Des Moines now.
They're in a different city. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So Munchausen syndrome by proxy which is now called factitious disorder inflicted on others, describes a situation in which a person intentionally fakes or induces physical or psychological symptoms in another, usually a child, in order to gain attention, sympathy, or medical care. The caregiver systematically misrepresents various symptoms, fabricates signs, manipulates laboratory tests, manipulates clinicians and other health professionals, or purposely harms or injures the victim by poisoning, drugging, causing infections, etc., or even by causing physical injury. There are multiple unexplained symptoms are often reported. Multiple doctors are consulted and presented with different or altered stories of what has happened or their medical history. And it's common for symptoms to be only present when in the care of the abusive caregiver. And often, the abusive parent has knowledge of or works in the medical field.
This is a tangent. Do you get annoyed when the DSM decides to change a disorder, especially when they make it longer? Like, I just did the syllables in my head, and Munchausen syndrome by proxy is already a long ass name, but factitious disorder inflicted on others. I don't know.
It does sometimes get annoying when they completely change the name of something, because it becomes colloquially known.
Right. Everyone
even
knows
though
Munchausen's.
Right, people still say Munchausen's, even though technically that's not the correct medical term.
Right. Okay. I noticed that as as we talk about iterations of the DSM, things coming in, coming out. And then I had one professor that would just lament when they would change certain things. And so it's kind of annoying in this case. But anyways, back to the case in hand.
Yes.
Is this a common diagnosis? Also, is there a mental health disorder that is commonly associated by the victimizer who has Munchausen's or factitious disorder? And do you think Tanya had that?
So factitious disorder inflicted on another is rare. It's not something that is happening all the time out there. But exact numbers aren't really available because it can be so difficult to identify it. Factitious disorder, it is the mental health disorder that's tracked in the DSM. That is the title of it. It's more common in women who are more often the primary caregivers, right? It can be associated with personality disorders. That increases the risk that you might encounter this. It's associated with experiencing childhood trauma, particularly the death of a parent. But Tanya was evaluated by 2 psychologists during this whole investigation who both agreed that she did not suffer from any type of mental illness other than FCAA.
Why do you think this is associated or correlated with people who lost a parent?
Oftentimes because they're looking for that attention and sympathy and comforting, which if they lost a parent,
that makes sense.
They wouldn't have gotten.
Or something like
right.
that. Mm-hmm. Got it. So some significant episode in their childhood that was very traumatic that led to an outpouring of attention from other people.
Correct.
Is possibly why this seed is planted.
Right.
What do we think that was with Tanya? Was it when her mom was sick?
I think it maybe started when her mom was sick, and she spent a lot of time in the hospital, and so she associated the hospital with her mom, who she loved dearly and had a very close relationship with. So I think that was part of it. And then if we go back to her days as a babysitter and little 4-month-old Scotty Simmons, who stopped breathing.
And she won an award from the Chamber of Commerce or
exactly.
something.
Yeah, she won an award for helping to save his life.
Yeah. So I kind of said this earlier, but now that we are aware that she didn't have any medical record claiming that Morgan had Fragile X syndrome, that might be why they were delayed when they passed away, because the lack of oxygen to the brain.
Right.
So, yeah.
Exactly, because repeated episodes of, not having enough oxygen, especially in an infant brain when it's developing, can cause permanent damage.
Yeah. Well, tell us what they discovered.
So, Michael had one more episode on March 1st, 1988. By that time, an investigation was in full swing, and with Child Protective Services having grave concerns about the safety of this child. They suspected that Tanya was causing Michael to stop breathing by smothering him, likely with a pillow or her hands, and that the scratches on his face were the result of him fighting to try and get her off of him or get the pillow off of his face.
Mm-hmm.
A petition was filed, and Michael was placed into foster care, and then eventually into the care of his aunt, Beverly Kay, who adopted him. After being removed from his mother's care, Michael never experienced another episode, and his health and development improved significantly, and he grew into a normal and healthy child.
I wonder, they probably didn't think to look or they would have been healed by the time, but I wonder if Tanya had like defensive marks or like from Michael on her, you know, like if he has them on the face from him, it's like he's trying to get the pillow off, so maybe he scratches his own face.
Yes, that was
Right?
the idea, is he was scratching his own face.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there were other times when he had his episodes where she would have had scratches on her from him.
Right. Possibly, right? Because he was a active toddler at this
Yeah.
point.
I mean, they can
he
push
he would fight back.
Yeah. Bite.
Yes.
All right.
And so generally, although Tanya never admitted her suffocating him or smothering him is sort of accepted as what was happening this entire time
It makes sense.
to Michael and also to Morgan to cause their breathing episodes.
Yes. She is the common denominator.
Yes, exactly. So Tanya was arrested and charged with child abuse, and her trial started on February 27th in 1987. Tanya pled not guilty and continuously denied having intentionally harmed her son. Multiple expert witnesses were called to speak about Michael's health, Tanya's psychological state, and, family and friends spoke about her character. However, the judge in Iowa found Tanya Reid guilty of felony child endangerment for her treatment of Brandon Michael, and she was sentenced to 10 years in the women's prison in Mitchellville, Iowa. Now, it took some convincing to get investigators in Texas to look into the death of Morgan Reid. But in 1993, a grand jury indicted Tanya on 2 counts, murder and serious injury to a child. On December 13th, 1993, Tanya was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 62 years in prison and a fine of $10,000. In February of 1995, her murder conviction was overturned on appeal, and she was released. She had finished up her sentence in Iowa by then. But she was retried in 1996, and though she, was offered a plea deal to serve only 10 years, she declined and ended up being found guilty again and sentenced to 40 years. She remains incarcerated at the women's prison in Gatesville, Texas.
Did the book say, was it Jim that was trying to get the other kid looked into, or was it someone else?
So it was actually the investigators and the prosecutor from Iowa.
Okay.
Because they dug into all the records, including into Morgan's records, and were like, hey, this child died by murder, and sent all of that to investigators in Texas, who were initially kind of like, nah, she's already in jail.
Got it.
But eventually an investigator took it seriously.
And so she won an appeal or whatever, so she, was let go or whatever, and then she was retried again for the same case because the first conviction was overturned. Yeah,
so the appeal was granted on the argument of insufficient counsel. So she got a new lawyer, and then they retried the case.
Okay.
Kind of a thing. So I guess it's not that it was overturned, it was thrown out and said this doesn't count.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, so she won her appeal, but the charges were still there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy.
I know.
But justice was done, I guess. And
yeah,
so wait, she would have been out if she would have taken the 10 years by now.
Yes, she would have. If she had taken the 10 years, she would have been out in
2005.
2005.
2006.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah, and so, her family's kind of moved on without her. I think, her kids are all grown up. They don't have contact with her. Jim divorced her when she was convicted. I think her family doesn't know what to think. Because
Right.
it's hard to believe that,
Sure.
Your child would harm their own child in this way.
This has got to be one of the most confounding things to other family members, right? Because again, like you listed reasons why people typically get or become this type of Munchausen factitious whatever, and it's not it's not like it's like a ton of abuse she experienced. You know what I mean?
No.
So it really does seem to come out of nowhere.
Right. And in all other ways, right, she was a good mom. She's there for her kids. She takes care of them. She, feeds, clothes, educates, takes them to doctors, spends time with them. So for all, in all other ways, I mean, she really did love her kids, right? It's not that she didn't love them. She really did experience grief when Morgan died. And so it just is so kind of confounding that a good mother who loves her kids in every other way and in no other way abused them. Like, she wasn't physically abusive to them in any other way. She, wasn't emotionally abusive to them in any other way. Like, this was the one thing that she did.
Well, you know that we work with a child abuse pediatrician.
Yes, I do.
And he has told me about a few cases where he had to review the medical records for suspicion of, well, at the time, Munchausen by proxy. And it can be like thousands of pages.
Right.
Because some of these kids are in and out of hospitals for years.
Right.
Right.
And they're receiving serious medical treatment, like
All
surgeries,
over the place.
Cancer treatment when they don't have cancer, like.
Yeah. So it can be a very long process to find the patterns, to establish that, yes, this would be medical child abuse or, whatever you want to call it. And that's with modern technology and stuff like that. So, I mean, I guess in looking at this case, when they finally decided to investigate it to when she was arrested, it wasn't that long of a period of time.
No, it moved pretty quickly.
Yeah. So I guess, that's a good thing.
Right. And it was said that at the time, the main investigators that were assigned to this case had never heard of Munchausen's by proxy before.
Oh, sure.
Right. It wasn't something that was well known. There had been just a couple of cases, like other cases that had been like prosecuted in the country as child abuse.
Well, it makes no sense.
Right.
Like,
it doesn't.
To an investigator, they're going to be like, no way. Right?
Right.
So it's one thing to be a child murderer, but then there's another, you're just trying to keep your child sick.
Right.
So it's just, it's
and it's so different from every other type of child maltreatment that exists out there.
Yeah.
That even like the CPS workers were like, I've never heard of this before.
Right.
Now, I think it's a lot more well known. It's been publicized a lot more, and of course, like, information is just more readily available. But at the
Gypsy
time,
Rose is like a household name.
exactly, yeah. So yeah, Tanya was the first person in Iowa to be charged for child abuse for Munchausen's by proxy. So she was one of the first ones out there to be criminally charged for it. So it kind of sets that precedent, but...
And you said they didn't find anything psychologically wrong with her as far as diagnoses?
Right. No personality disorders, no, like, delusional
That's weird.
disorders. Because you think, like, to do something, like, a person has to be crazy.
Right. Well, yeah,
Right.
something.
But, yeah, there's no...
How do you even treat a person like this if there's nothing diagnosable to treat?
Well,
Behavioral modification?
I mean, essentially, and, like some, like, cognitive behavioral therapy to, like, get those needs met in a way that doesn't harm your child.
Well, she'll be out in 10 years if she's... I'm looking at a picture of her right now. I mean, I think this was from a while ago, but she definitely is not blonde and blue-eyed.
Nope.
Anyway, that's a terrible story. And I was talking to Courtney before this case, and I think she kind of understood what I was saying, but we had both watched that high school catfish documentary, and I was
Unknown number.
unknown number, and I was asking her, like, what she thought the motivation was for this mom in that documentary. Oh wait, spoiler! Don't listen to this. You haven't seen it. Spoiler alert, do not listen to this if you have not seen the catfish documentary, unless you're not going to watch it, the high school one. But the motivation in that with that mom sort of reminded me of like a motivation in a Munchausen's case.
To a certain degree.
Different, but...
Right. It's a different way of, seeking attention or sympathy or to get, needs met that weren't being met by other people. That mom in that documentary, right? Obviously, this is where the spoiler comes in. She was the one who was sending horrific, abusive and like sexual text messages to her daughter and her daughter's ex-boyfriend. And it was very crazy. But the difference between that and factitious disorder, right? The main difference is that the anguish and the hurt that she, caused her daughter was real, right? She wasn't having to do something to
fake it.
To fake, yeah,
symptoms.
The symptoms of PTSD that her daughter was experiencing. She wasn't pretending to have symptoms of her own, which is the other type of factitious disorder where you pretend that you have things wrong with you. But, I mean, the end result is the same, right? It's about getting attention, getting sympathy,
Right.
feeling cared about when you feel really lonely.
Right, because I was thinking, I assume that her daughter probably came to her a lot and she was able to comfort her daughter and be like, a very important person in her daughter's life. People in the community would be like, oh, we feel so horrible for what you're going through. Can we do anything to help? And all of this stuff. So she was also getting attention while putting her daughter through hell.
Right.
And her daughter's boyfriend. So it just sometimes these things remind me of each other.
Right.
In a weird way. And then I ask Courtney what she thinks, and then she sets me straight.
Right. And,
clinically.
If there is a clinical word for what that mom did, I don't know it.
Yeah.
If we have any experts on this out there that
right.
know what that's called.
Yeah. I mean, she's a case study
for
man.
it, but yeah.
Like maybe she'll be in the next iteration of the DSM.
Maybe.
I don't know, because that's coming out soon, I've heard, so we'll see what changes.
Yeah, every 10 years or so, they like to revise it.
Yeah. All right, well, good tale.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing the research on this one.
Absolutely. It was a book that I was going to read anyway, so I didn't mind.
Well, I'm going to attempt to do the next one. I do have a book that I started, and it's pretty gnarly. So hopefully we'll get that out to you in the next week or two. But until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.